This podcast is sponsored by IQ Bar.
I've got good news and bad news. Here's the bad news. Most protein bars are packed with sugar and unpronounceable ingredients. The good news? There's a better option. I'm Will, and I created IQ Bar plant protein bars to empower doers like you with clean, delicious, low-sugar brain and body fuel. IQ Bars are packed with 12 grams of protein, brain nutrients like magnesium and lion's mane, and zero weird stuff. And right now, you can get 20% off all IQ Bar products, plus free shipping. Try our delicious IQ Bar sampler pack with 7 plant protein bars, 4 hydration mixes, and 4 enhanced coffee sticks. Clean ingredients, amazing taste, and you'll love how you feel. Refuel smarter, hydrate harder, caffeinate larger with IQ Bar.
Go to eatiqbar.com and enter code BAR20 to get 20% off all IQ Bar products plus free shipping. Again, go to eatiqbar.com and enter code BAR20.
Listening to 100 Words or Less with Ray Harkins. What's happening, everybody? Welcome to this podcast, and this is a special episode for a multitude of reasons. One, you're here, and you care about punk and hardcore, and indie rock, and emo, and metal, and all the genres and subgenres. You're showing up to shows, you're buying merch, you're doing all the things. Even if you're just like listening to the podcast, and that is your connection to independent music, that's awesome. Love to see that, so thank you. This episode's also special because it's the 700th episode. And that means, it's a round number and you're supposed to celebrate those round numbers. But truthfully, I am just glad that this show exists, not only in my life, but in all of you who listen to this on a weekly basis, or maybe you just check in on it like once or twice a year. In any event, all of that is welcome. And you are the reason this thing keeps on going. Because truthfully, I don't really need to do this anymore. I've talked to a lot of people under the sun. There's clearly still more people that I want to talk to and have conversations with. But it's the whole give and take relationship that you have as a person who is, putting stuff out in the world. And truthfully, you guys, the collective listenership, gives more than I take, so to speak. So anyways, appreciate that. But I'm thrilled to welcome Jacob Bannon from Converge on the show. Obviously, you are aware of Converge. If you've ever listened to heavy music, punk or hardcore or anything, like Converge is a starter kit band where you're getting this, you got your Gorilla Biscuits, your Minor Threats, and then as you start to go into the more metal/metalcore side of things, like Converge is, on the top of the list in regards to that. And Jake has been a person I've wanted on the show for, 5-6 years. Had a few conversations with his publicist, and at the time he wasn't really interested in long form podcasts. Totally respected it, understood it. Every time Converge kind of came around, I was like, all right, maybe this is the time. But you need to listen to the new Converge record, Love Is Not Enough. It's incredible. It just came out in early February on Epitaph and Deathwish, and it's a really exceptional piece of work. It probably is my favorite record since like No Heroes, which I know is like a pretty big statement, but it's a really, really good record. So anyways, Jake was out doing press, and he was open to a lot of these opportunities. I heard him appear on some friend shows and had some interesting discussions there. I framed this conversation in regards to like eras of the band and kind of walked him through records and, mindset in each of the records. But then we went to a lot of different topics, including talking about the legendary Hateverge set at the Whiskey, early 2000s, I want to say. I was lucky enough to be there. So I saw it and my mind was blown. And then we also talk about a subject that is near and dear to my heart because anytime I've played a show and I put on a shirt for a band that I like or a band I want to signal boost or whatever, it's a thought process. And Jake is very much in line with that same thought process. And we have a very insightful conversation because, I knew that he was paying attention to that, but he really puts a lot of thought into it. So anyways, all great topics of conversation. And I hope that you listen along. Like I said, Converge has a new record. Check that out. You want to get in touch with the show. 100wordspodcast@gmail.com. I accept any and all emails from a, pitch perspective or just listening to bands or whatever's on your mind, guests, all that sort of stuff. Appreciate all of that feedback. And you can leave a rating and review on the Apple Podcast page or simply leave a rating on Spotify. All those things help the show get recommended in the algorithm to the people who are listening to like-minded shows. And it just, it's circuitous. It helps everybody out when you do that. So please do that. Also, weekly recommendations. I've been doing this for the better part of 2 years. I'm just recommending music that I am listening to and getting into. It can be new, old, everything in between. Find a link in the show notes to an Apple Music playlist or a Spotify playlist, and then, ping pong around there. And hopefully you find some new music that you haven't listened to. This week's recommendation is the new Nothing record called A Short History of Decay. It's out on our friends from Run for Cover Records. Shout out to Jeff and Dane and all those human beings over there. But and Tom, come on, can't forget Tom. Anyways, Nothing is an incredible band because they've been able to evolve and change over time and hone their craft and, battle through a lot of adversity, because there were many times where I was watching them and I was thinking to myself, I don't know if I'm ever going to see this band again, just because it just feels like they're kind of, ready to hang it up, and not because they sucked or anything like that, but they're just like, yeah, we've done our show thing. Like, maybe we'll put out some more music. But this new record is a incredible piece of work, and I love to see that. So yeah, that's I can't recommend it higher. It's like an evolution in a way that they still are connected to their, shoegaze roots, but are more straightforward, if that makes sense. So yeah, check that out. And like I said, click on the link in the show notes for weekly recommendations. It's very, very good. So let's talk to Jake from Converge right now. You have, a lot of musical output, artistically, personally, et cetera, et cetera. I wanted to focus on, obviously, the early years of the band and kind of looking at, like your basically pre-petitioning and when you guys were obviously figuring out who the heck you are as an individual and then who you are as musicians.
For sure.
And
kids figuring it out. Absolutely.
Of course. And when you guys obviously first started to, play shows around Massachusetts, and I know you probably did not have a conception of oh yes, we're going to be a hardcore band versus a metal band or whatever. You were just kind of throwing it all in the blender, so to speak.
Yeah.
Or did you feel like you were basically oh, we want to be a hardcore band, but a little more metallic?
Well, I think two things were happening in that, where you have, number one, you're kids, so you don't know what you're doing, but you want to do everything. Because you have a voice and you want to be heard and have this, you have this really great form of expression in front of you. That wasn't really something that I felt, that I could just find that would be part of my path at all in music before I sort of found punk rock. My brother's a drummer and always played drums, and he's 6 years older than me. And so he came up at a time of the sort of golden era of hard rock and sort of heavy metal was happening, this is predating Headbangers Ball, all that stuff. So he was kicked out of school for having long hair, if that puts it in perspective in terms of the conservatism that existed at the time, where sort of music fit into the sort of vernacular of things. It was something, it was just a weird, rough time for that. So I was exposed to a variety of things associated with hard rock and metal early on because of that. So as early as I can remember, there was a Blue Oyster Cult record, in the collection of my brother. There was, Iron Maiden, Killers was in there. And he was buying them, more often than not, either at the mall or a couple of secondhand shops that used to sell the cutouts of of records. So they would often trim off the sides. There would always be like a 45-degree cut and usually some sort of embossed stamp or sticker on it saying, not for sale, whatever. But this is like early on. This is like early used records basically were a thing. And he'd buy those because they were saying the same thing. And I would hear them, and oftentimes I wouldn't understand them, but I'd be enamored by cover art and the sort of visual character that was so strong and prominent for a lot of these sort of hard rock bands. And so that was the first time I started having this sort of like the teeth of that sort of aggressive music world starting to sink into me a little bit. As I got older, I wanted to play music myself. I was not allowed to touch anything of his in any way. So like if I did, severe beating would basically happen. So I was not a drummer because of that. Although I've probably, in all likelihood, probably wanted to do that more than any other form of instrumentation as a person. But that was his lane. So the closest thing I could get was bass. And so I got a Hondo bass and I started just learning the 4 strings, learning these basics, figuring out notes and figuring out songs, and just kind of like getting into music that way. I still felt a bit separated from it. It still felt like a form of expression that I was doing for my own entertainment as like a form of play, but it wasn't something that I was thinking that was going to be like a chosen art form or like a, like an outlet of true creativity for me or anything like that. Then punk rock appeared in my life. Punk rock was like a byproduct of skateboard culture and BMX culture. I had, just like every other town, right? Like, it's funny, like back then we were called hoods, in our town because we all had hoods on and then we were hoodlums. So it was like a thing. People, you're the hoods. But all those people oftentimes are sort of like subscribing to early counterculture things, in the mid 80s, late 80s. If they weren't punk rock, they were punk rock adjacent and on a BMX bike. I just watched Stranger Things with my kids, and it was such a interesting throwback to me because that experience of being like a 80s gaggle of neighborhood kids with BMX bikes, entertaining yourselves, and that they're playing Dungeons and Dragons, but we did that in some degree, and then we started just riding BMX, and then eventually started like one of them gets a punk rock record and gets like a Dead Kennedys record, like we were talking about that earlier, or like a Misfits record, stuff like that. You sort of have these like little introductions to these things that are tied to that that subculture for you. And the music really connected with me. It was like the first time that I heard something that had the power of metal and things like that, but it felt more raw. It felt more intense. And the people also just sort of, they looked like ordinary people in the sense that they were emoting. Things looked aggressive, whatever. People are jumping all over the place and you're seeing, things, but you see a little bit of yourself in that, where with heavy metal, I didn't see myself in like Vince Neil or something. You know what I mean? Where I'd be like, oh, well, that guy has a wild voice. Like I don't see myself in Ozzy Osbourne. These people are just a different, they're entertainers, and so this was music to me that felt approachable, and it felt like something that I could kind of hold on to, more akin to, like a 60s garage band, really, so I started playing bass and wanted to play with guys that were doing the same thing. And, like there was only a couple of drummers in our town, in our high school, and like picked up one of them who was in my homeroom, and we started playing like thrash covers and stuff like that. Cause, by the time I hit like middle school and stuff, that was starting to happen, like early mid thrash, speed metal, stuff like that. But early on, it was definitely like being introduced through those like classic heavy metal records via my brother. I'm really thankful for that.
Mm-hmm. This is going to sound weird, but is Converge ostensibly like your first band?
Yeah.
Like you didn't, right? Which is amazing to see that your first band to be able to obviously progress in the ways that you have, and that's pretty impressive.
Well, that's one of the things that sets our band apart from others, right? Like, it was funny actually. I was just sent like the new Decibel magazine the other day, and we were like really fortunate enough to be on the cover and be featured in it. And I was like, oh, like, just like looking at this, I'm like, oh, well, this feels substantive or whatever. And it's kind of like I see us, and then I see in the Hall of Fame, they have a wonderful Hall of Fame section where they celebrate records and done books on them and whatnot. And they were doing one on lethargy, and I see all these wonderful photos of Bill and Braun when they were kids, when they were that age of making racket. And in that, they were more like, I think, around like the 18 to 20-year-old kind of plays. So I was skewing a little younger than that, but still I was seeing this, like, these fresh-faced sort of versions of these people that I've watched creatively and personally grow into mature adults, who are just like, fantastic creators of things. But like, I'm seeing their primordial form there. But that was separated by, a variety of different chapters in their creative lives. Where our band, it's pretty much all contained within the records. It's like, there's not like eras of us that within our band where like, somebody breaks it up and goes away and has a whole different thing, and then they come back and need to celebrate what they once did. It's like, no, like we evolved and we progressed and became better communicators artistically, better players, and more focused over time, all within the confines of one band. And that is something that is a bit unique. It's like, it's weird though, like in punk rock and hardcore, like that there's probably more versions of that than there aren't, right? Like, I'm just like thinking to like people who I admire in the world. Like, I know that like, Cro-Mags isn't Harley's first band, but like it's when it became a band, a vision. Like Roger messed around with other stuff before Agnostic Front, but he was so young when that became like a big identifier for him creatively, And so like our story isn't that much different. We just have far less lineup changes than many bands do.
It is always my distinct pleasure to welcome sponsors on the show that I wholeheartedly believe in. And our friends at evilgreed.com are one of those companies. You've heard me talk about them before, but if you were not aware, they are a heavy music merchandise record purveyor. They ship worldwide. They're based in Berlin, Germany. But before you dive into their site, use this promo code, HISTORY. That gets you 10% off of your first order, and that's a limited time offer. So please use that promo code. It gets discontinued in like a week or something, so do it immediately. They work with bands like, Speed, Drain, Chelsea Wolf, Blood Incantation. If you like this show, I can guarantee you that you will like at least 90% of the bands they work with, because they have a specific point of view. They don't open the doors to everybody and are just like, hey, come on in, like, here's another web store or whatever. They have a very specific point of view. And that's why I like Evil Greed. They also have great social content in regards to posting features on records. They do unboxing. They do recommendations on what they have in stock, bestsellers, all that stuff. And it really does feel like you are kind of walking into a record store when you go onto their website. And that makes me feel at home. So again, go to evilgreed.com, use the promo code HISTORY for 10% off your first order, ships worldwide, and the shipping rates to us here in the United States are very advantageous. So hop on it. evilgreed.com now.
You know what they say. Early bird gets the ultimate vacation home. Book early and save over $120 with Vrbo. Because early gets you closer to the action, whether it's waves lapping at the shore or snoozing in a hammock that overlooks, well, whatever you want it to, so you can all enjoy the payoff come summer with Vrbo's early booking deals. Rise and shine. Average savings $141. Select homes only.
Looking back at those, initial recordings in 7 inches and everything like that, do you, are you able to retroactively look back at, who you guys were putting together and the songs you were putting together and notice parts of the DNA that still exists? Or is it just like, well, I mean, that was us as kids, and now moving forward, it's a much more, each distinct thing is its own, like you said, particular era, or is anything recognizable from back then?
I think it is recognizable. I think that like a person's fingerprint is put on something early on, and like we spend so much time and energy to become better players and communicators over time, to like almost like remove that fingerprint, right? Like looking for some version of like artistic evolution or like progression that just like really takes you to a new place. But like when I see our band, I still see, or I listen to, if I listen to our band, or just like think about our band in any way, it's still Kurt and I as teenagers. It's still Nate at like probably like 19. I met him, something like that. Like Ben joined our band when he was 20 years old. He's married with 3 children and in multiple, bands professionally. Like you just didn't think about those things and just like, wow, it's like, I don't know, it's just kind of fascinating sometimes.
Absolutely. And looking at the, Petitioning and When Forever Comes Crashing records, I know Petitioning, at least for me, and I know many people of, my sort of whatever, mid to late 90s generation, like getting into you guys when that was happening. And it seems like that was the first time that Converge really had more of a emotional and visual identity kind of being built out. Did that feel intentional at the time, or was that only obvious in hindsight?
I think you start you start wanting more from, all right, well, life continues to get complex, right? Sort of talked about that before, where this community has a place of a sort of surrogate family or an identifier of that for many people. So you come in it really young, and like you have a lot of emotion, but you also don't know how to fully communicate those things yet. Like learning art and music is like learning a language. It's like it's an actual language. It's not French. It's not English. It's not math. It's a multi-layered art form that can grow exponentially in all directions at any given time. And so when you start getting older and going through more complex experiences, and in fact, more different negatives, like you're already reflecting on negatives that compelled you to write aggressive music as a teenager. Now your life is getting more complicated, or at least, like in my situation, and I'm already a bit hindered by not having all the tools, if I was a well-adjusted human being, that brought me to punk rock in the first place. And now I'm dealing with more real life stuff as I evolve and age. The art's going to get deeper, and the things that we're going to explore emotionally are going to get deeper, and they're going to resonate with people at that age. And I feel that a lot of people, like as yourself, we're basically like, I'm 49, so in punk rock terms, I would say that you and I are in the same generation, right? If we go like a couple years one direction or the other, we're kind of separated, but we have the same sort of like thing. And like we're in an interesting place because we're still true fanatics and listeners of music. And we've grown with these artists that we listen to or are part of, or like, socially or artistically tied to for like the duration of our lives. And our band is one of those, by writing personal songs over time. Like my personal experiences and the things that I struggle with, although they may feel really, really isolating and really individual to me, right? Really specific to me. are also things that, a 44 or 45-year-old are also going through the same things. I'm just talking about like, age and demographic and things like that. Or like, we're not doing through the exact same things, but we're going through similar things. And so there's a relatability to what we do, that's, grown over time. Like, I never thought we'd start a band that would be a thing that would have any sort of life past the moment that we were in, like just like playing our first show or playing our 10th show or going on our first tour. Like, all those experiences are very like very exciting and very like, first time. And that's always sort of like the excitement there. Like, I've never thought of our band in the light of like having like a lineage or like being part of like a community that we are inherently part of, you know what I mean? Because it's all very much in the moment. So like, I don't know. The only thing I knew I wanted to do when I started to look at music as for me as an art form was like, we could all be loud. We could do the aggressive stuff that just, like lights us up inside in some weird primal way. But like, the one thing that connected with me was like the realness of hardcore and punk rock. And I really felt like it was just an awesome place that could give me a platform for the things that I was struggling with. And it's, it's just that's it. I just wanted to like write a personal song that resonated, that like had that realness to it. That wasn't, like about, being brutal or, some like general metaphor. I wanted substance because those are the artists that I loved had substance, that's why I connected to the realness of all of them. And I was like, wow, I need that in my life as well.
Mm-hmm. Totally. And I know the jump to When Forever Comes Crashing, a lot of people were like, oh, this is a different Converge. It sounds different. And I know that could be said about every single record.
Yeah. You're an interesting case in terms of age and just like, like involvement in this musical world. Like, I say this to people sometimes and like they don't get it and probably think I'm bullshitting, but there are definitely like vast amount of listeners of our band. And mind you, like, these are the opinions I hear because they're of my age group. Like, and it's kind of like probably like even friends, like they don't care about our band after that. Like, that was when we were our best, was like our, sloppy teenage selves,
Right.
and they're like, and there's a lot to that. Like, music's subjective, fucking whatever, you know what I mean? Like, but like, I can say like, you're intrinsically wrong. Like, we're actually better players and better communicators. What that is about though, is somebody's connection to music and the imprint that it left and and how deep that is. And it's not like our band is deep, has cut into them that way. It's that like the age which they came in at it. There's probably there's countless records probably for that person that also did that if they're into music. But that's more of a reflection of the listener and sort of something that they identified as like one of the, like an important part of their life. And that's what that's about. And I really respect that. It's like, that's why nobody's wrong when they say like one record's better than the other. But I think it is funny though that there were people like as soon as Aaron was out of the band, you guys are fucking garbage. You know what I mean? Like,
totally.
Like, no, like literally nothing changed. We just had to figure out some stuff technically. But you're actually wrong. Like, like, we all grew. It's okay, but
Totally.
It is funny though, to think about it in those terms sometimes.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, I remember too, like that record in particular, I felt like I had to work at it in the same way that like, whatever, getting into Neurosis for the first time, where it was like, okay, I got to really spend some time with this record. Like, this isn't just like an immediate turn on and then I'm completely in. I'm like, okay.
I think there's a few reasons for that, too. Like, number one, it's chaos, right? And, 2, it's like, it's a that's what we were artistically sort of like going for. And like, no, like, yeah, we want to be intentional and we want to be like sharp, precise musicians, but like we want to make chaos that is that. So it's like hyper focused chaos, and it's got a lot of layers going on intentionally and unintentionally, like stuff that there's probably like, 3 or 4 vocal tracks going at given times. Like I remember during that recording session, like Steve Austin was engineering that record, and we definitely wanted to like lean into like being a little more experimental, because our times leading up to that were just like pretty normal recording sessions, like just really condensed, but like boiled down in like a day, or like maybe like 2 or 3 days. So this was like a big commitment for us to do, and he'd be like, take this, like little kid microphone and go and do the whole, like, the whole song in that, or this whole verse, and be, all right, cool. Add some texture here, take your lyric book and just kind of riff, like we did stuff like that. And so it, like, from that point of view, from myself as a, one of 4 instruments, I definitely brought a lot of chaos to that. And there's like a million guitar tracks, like it's a bunch of really interesting ideas to me. And we were just kind of like biting off as much as we could. So yeah, that record definitely took some time for people, for sure.
Sure. And during that time too, I know touring, obviously, I mean, as in every band, it becomes an important part in what they want to do. This is kind of an overarching question, but how has your relationship with touring, changed? Like, was it, excitement, then it felt like work, and then now it's at a manageable spot? Or, how was your relationship with the road?
That's a great question. It's interesting. I genuinely appreciate touring and what it's kind of brought to my life in terms of having a sort of a more international experience in my life. And when I meet people who don't travel for work or pleasure or what have you, or just kind of say geographically kind of connected to one area, sometimes focus and perspective narrows, socially, personally, all of it. And so like I feel for people who don't have that experience, like, and it doesn't have to be music or travel, for in some extravagant way or whatever. Just fucking getting over a state line, if you're on the East Coast, see Middle America. If you're on the West Coast, see Middle America. If you're Middle America, see the West Coast, vice versa. Like, because it's important to have we have that, like, a really broad perspective about life in 2026. We live in a world economy filled with incredible cultures, and I really love that music has been able to like take me to a place like Japan, or Australia, New Zealand. I've been to South Korea, but we did not play there. But like, just like thinking about those things, these are places that I would have never connected with otherwise without music. So I'm super grateful for that. The miles that it puts on you do something different to you. And I think that any sort of, if I feel this at this level, and I don't consider our band a full-time band, we're full-time artists, we're full-time, it's a thing that's always moving, but it's, we're not on tour at this point in our lives for like a year at a time. There have been times where we've been out for like, a month on, month off, 2 months on, 2 weeks off, 5 days on, week on, 3 months off, like we've done that. And it's hard to do that. It makes you, I joke about this sometimes with the guys, like, it makes you not a civilian. In the sense that you do have a nomadic experience. Like you are literally living out of a bag. I mean, like right here, like this is my bag that I take everywhere. Okay. This is also my tour bag that I take everywhere.
Sure.
I'm like a creature of habit, like probably like most people, but like if it fits in there, and it goes on my back, that's what I have for a tour. I know that's not normal. And I know that it's like, it's done weird shit to me, and it's probably tied to other psychological things and whatnot, but like, I never unpack.
So
I try to just, I'm always as efficient as I possibly can be.
Okay.
But in a way where I feel that like it might be beneficial to my life, but it's also, it's also super rigid too. And it comes from that's definitely been conditioned. Like everything just goes on me and that's it. That's like, and like, that also kind of comes from stuff when I was a kid, because I grew up in a divorced environment. So on the weekends, I would go stay with my father sometimes, and I would always had a bag. And then I just sort of like lived out of bag. And then you think of like elementary, middle school, you're in your backpack, and all of a sudden, like my school bag becomes my life bag because it's what I take to my father's apartment in the city. And then, like fast forward a few years, start a band, go on your first tour. That's the bag that you basically put on, and that's your tour bag. And now it's my life bag. But I know I know that like, that's not a typical way to live. You know what I mean? Like, I never unpack.
There are certain records that loom large in my life. And there's a record from a band called Quicksand, called Manic Compression, that as a 15-year-old, when I got to see them open for Offspring, or actually maybe I was 14, I got to see them open for Offspring here at the UCI Bren Event Center. And I had no clue who Quicksand was, but they were awesome. And I remember my friend and I buying Manic Compression and being like, this is really good. I don't know how to classify this. It's not punk, but I digress. It's because our amazing friends at Iodine Records are celebrating the 30th anniversary of this LP and have put together the definitive edition of this landmark album. It's remastered for vinyl. It's got a deluxe gatefold jacket, expanded artwork, and of course, several limited vinyl variants. But the coup de grace of this whole thing is they have a limited 64-page hardcover book. It has writings from Walter Schreifels and band members pontificating about why this record is so important to them, like Knock Loose, Coheed Cambria, Newfound Glory, Bane, Drug Church, Glassjaw, Touche Amore, and a ton more. I've received deluxe limited edition stuff from Iodine before, and these records are so lovingly put together, and it's a no-brainer. So go to iodinerecords.com, check it out, get that definitive edition, or just get one of the limited vinyl pressings. You won't lose either way. And shout out to our friends at Iodine Records for supporting the show. Go buy Manic Compression if you don't have it already. Jeez.
The Bleacher Report app is your destination for sports. Right now, the NBA is heating up, March Madness is here, and MLB is almost back. Every day there's a new headline, a new highlight, a new moment you've got to see for yourself. That's why I stay locked in with the Bleacher Report app. For me, it's about staying connected to my sports. I can follow the teams I care about, get real-time scores, breaking news, and highlights all in one place. Download the Bleacher Report app today so you never miss a moment.
I'd be remiss if I did not mention Poacher Diaries, just because that I know that many people gravitate towards those songs, and even though it may ostensibly just be kind of a and I don't mean this in a pejorative way, like a throwaway release. I mean, you guys are intentional about the stuff you do, but it's like, oh yeah, this is a split. It could just end up in the band's catalog.
Yeah.
The fact that you guys...
Oh, go ahead. What were you going to say about the record?
I was just saying the fact that you guys wrote along, with Agoraphobic Nosebleed, which, your average hardcore kid is obviously not going to have an interaction with Scott Hall and his noise project.
Sure. Well, that band for us at the time also wasn't Scott Hall. And what I mean by that, our friend Jay Randall,
yep,
who was in that band. I'm not sure if he is now. I know that that band was primarily those two, but then kind of like became a bunch of different things over time. I'm not sure where he's in it now, but he was somebody that we met through typical local hardcore shows. And he was one of our friends that, was like going to all the same, we just all went to all the same shows, all the same bands, we were either playing them or just at them in like the middle of Massachusetts, Merrimack Valley, Fitchburg, Worcester, places like that. And he was like, oh, like we didn't see him for like a year, maybe, or a little less. And then like he reappeared and he was like, oh, I've been doing all this really incredible music. You should check it out. And he had like, by that time, like already released maybe like 6 or 7 agoraphobic Nosebleed 7-inches. And at the time, that was like super fucking prolific. And it still is and ambitious today, if you think about it. But like they were just super active making this really extreme music. And it was really inspiring. They were kind of like artistically more extreme, but like adjacent. And it was just kind of like a cool cross-pollination of things. But like that was a really cool record to do. And like working with like Derek Hess at the time on that project and Marty, his sort of like manager of art things, was like really just awesome experiences. Like it was like one of the first times where like I felt like a, I don't know, like a vision kind of like came together and it was like what I envisioned, like fully,
Yeah.
so I have like I have a fondness for that body of songs and stuff too. And also we had that's the only recording that we had with drummer John DeGiorgio, who was in a band called Conifera for a while. And what did they morphed into something? Oh, blanking. You might be able to know faster than me. Anyway,
Yeah, I can't recall, but I know. Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
Obviously.
like it's one of the Virginia sort of like chaotic metallic bands. Is it Sinifera? Is that it?
It might be.
See, this is like, I would be the most intelligent person in the world if I could forget little things like that. Or Conifera, maybe? I don't know. It's something like that. I'm gonna actually look this up. So
Sure, absolutely.
yes, it was Conifera.
Okay.
Really, really cool band. People should check that out. It looks like it does exist somewhere on the internet. But there was like a 7-inch and some other stuff. So anyway, he joined our band and was in our band for about a year. And that was like a really exciting time for like me personally, because I kind of like really felt like just kind of connected to our band as like I don't know, it was just like an important part of my life, like artistically, it felt like really rewarding. Like I felt like really in tune with like what we were like. I was like, oh my gosh, like we're doing like what we set out to do. And this is like pretty cool. So anyway, John joined our band after our first drummer left the band, and he sort of left, but didn't really tell us. His sort of interest was kind of like waned, and then he had like he had a physical injury that messed up his playing, and I know that was like something he was not excited about, and we were just growing apart. So like it was like the first time where like, I don't know, like we joined, like somebody joined our band who was like, I fucking get what you guys are doing. Cause like often like it also sort of felt like some of like the ideas were a little out there and a little chaotic and probably like not really in tune with him of like where he wanted to be creatively. But like, I don't think he would necessarily say that, but there was just kind of like a disconnect that was happening. So when John joined the band, it was like really invigorating because it was like, he fucking gets it. And he gets it. And he's such a different kind of drummer. And he played everything so technical and so fast. And I remember just being in the room when he was, drum tracking for that record, which I believe we actually tracked the record twice, because we did it before our first European tour, and we weren't excited about like the energy of it. And so when we came back, I think we redid all the drums again and basically started over.
Wow.
Which was like also like a crazy luxury too, right? Like
Sure.
we were used to like, I don't like
You get 4 hours, right?
yeah, before,
Yeah.
Well, this was like one of the first records where I don't know if it was the first record where we were in like Kurt's proper studio in Norwood, but it may have been. And it was, he had like a proper live room and a mixing room and like a loft. It was like a whole thing. And so it felt like a really like, I don't know, just like not luxurious thing, but we were like, holy shit, like we actually can just track it again, like
That's an option. Yeah.
yeah, it's an option. It's like, yeah, it sucks. It's everybody's time again. You know what I mean? But like, yeah, we can do it because, like it's do it yourself. It's a kind of a sliding scale, like he's already gotten paid for the time, but if we want it to be artistically better, let's just fucking do it again, But so
yeah, and we can do that.
Cool. And documenting that time with him and the band was cool. So I like those songs. I look at them in a different way than all the other songs.
Yeah, absolutely. Because much has been pontificated on in regards to Jane Doe, we don't need to go too deep, but just the not because the record doesn't deserve the time, but obviously, there a lot of proverbial ink has been spilled on it. But
yeah, I mean, it's fine. Yeah, it's fine. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's yeah, I mean, that's like a really special time too. Because again, in a haste, similar to our first sort of drummer situation, like that just kind of like just happened. I believe we were on tour, and Nate probably remembers the story, but I remember we were like in Virginia somewhere, and he was basically like quitting. And I remember he went and he called John from a payphone, and I think we were in like an emergency room or something. There was some sort of illness situation, but I don't remember exactly what, because it wasn't something too like traumatic or whatever.
Food poisoning or something, right?
Yeah, it was like, yeah, there was something like that. But anyway, John also just kind of like quit, and but he didn't tell us. He just didn't show up to play a show. That we had a show in the city, on, I think it was on Lansdowne Street. I can't remember I think it was called Club Karma at the time. It had like a million names, like City, Axis, all that stuff. But anyway, he basically no-showed, and Kurt was playing in a really cool project of his called Blue Green Heart with Ben. And Ben was we already knew Ben was kind of like this monster drummer that was like super young and in force-fed glass. I think that's what he was like mainly doing. And that's kind of like how, Kurt started playing with them. And he knew a bunch of our songs. And like Kurt was like, can you learn like a few more? And like, can you know like a dozen songs by tomorrow? And he's like, yeah, sure. And he did it. And so the first time of like him playing with us was that show, like in front of people, which was really kind of thrilling, in a weird, irresponsible way,
Sure. Baptism by fire.
Well, yeah, because like, what the fuck are you gonna do? You know what I mean? Like, you're like a 20-something-year-old kid. Like, you have this show. Like, we're just gonna fucking like, I don't know.
We'll figure it out, right?
Figure it out. So, and that's kind of how Ben joined the band. But
right.
Also, and so like that time, like for me, is like identified from when like Ben joined the band. Like basically at that point, like I know we were kind of like maybe like writing some stuff like before that, but like that was like when we started kind of really enjoying like our collective creative character. Like it was all kind of coming together, like like what we liked about this band, like with
Sure.
it. So,
Yeah.
so that's like what I get excited about when I think about that record and that time. And, like we, like making it was a really unique experience, like I sort of talked about like doing stuff at Kurt's, and that was like a really luxurious, thing, or at least, it feels like. And then for that record, we had like just more studio time available and more budget. And so we were able to record with an outside engineer and use like a couple studios in the city, which was like really, I don't know, that was like a really wild experience, like being like a kind of like a broken up 20-something-year-old kid in the same, you're in Studio A and James Taylor's in Studio B, and you're sharing the same kitchen. And, like we have to be quiet because you can't disturb a session totally. But like, it was like a really surreal time,
Sure.
for us and stuff. But I don't know, it kind of like goes by in a weird blur. People love that record. I think that's wonderful. Like, I'm glad people connect with it. Like, I don't necessarily romanticize it in the same way, because to me, it's like one of a variety of chapters of records that we're still making.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. A minor detail, but something I was lucky enough to witness was when you guys played with Hatebreed here in the City of Angels, where you did the Converge Breed mashup.
Yeah, that was a really fun show. And,
because you got, correct me if I'm wrong, like you guys were out here and then Hatebreed was playing. I can't remember the order of operation.
I don't even think they were out there. Jamie was out there, and like
right
for something, I don't remember what. And we were on tour at that time, and I think we probably played like Chain Reaction or Showcase.
Yeah.
Probably like one of those, at the, like around that time. And yeah, we just had this Troubadour show, and I think it was
it was at the Whiskey.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So we did the Troubadour the next tour with Caven. Okay. So yeah, so there was no Troubadour show. So we did just the Whiskey thing. And I think that was like, I don't know why. I don't know what tour it was though. That's what I'm trying to piece together.
Yeah. I don't remember either. It was also weird at that time because like the Whiskey was sort of dipping in and out of doing hardcore shows because obviously they were violent, and so they didn't know what to do.
And for us, like it felt kind of like otherworldly, right? It's like because like we're just like hardcore kids from Massachusetts, and like like playing chaotic hardcore, and we're playing this historic venue that like like has a huge imprint on me from just like my entry point into music, like that was sort of like a weirdly big deal, I don't know. That's it. Like to me, honestly, it was kind of like playing like the Whiskey and like even like the Troubadour to a degree, like those are like, I don't know, they're historic to, they're like a CB's experience for a band.
Mm-hmm.
As goofy as it is, you're just kind of like, yeah, it is kind of awesome.
Right. Well, there's definitely an element of like when you step inside of those venues, you're just like, well, we as in the collective community, we don't really belong here, but we're glad we're here and it's cool.
Well, right. And isn't that like something that like is like so like identifiable about like being a fucking hardcore kid? Like you always have a chip on your shoulder. Like that's why we're here. Like, and like even as you do stuff and you're like adjacent to other forms of like music, you're still not necessarily cross-pollinating and respected in the way that like you feel welcomed in those places typically. And so when those things do happen, they feel rare. They feel unique and special.
Our friends at rockabilly.com are the best for a multitude of reasons. One of them being they sell officially licensed merch. 2, They want you to save money by using this promo code. 100 words or less gets you 10% off your first order. And I don't care if you're into punk, metal, hardcore. They have over 500,000 items for you to get lost in and truthfully shop till you drop for anybody in your life, whether it's yourself. And maybe you're like, you know what? I actually need to get an Oasis shirt, or you know what? I really like Eminem on top of, a Dark Throne shirt. Like, all of these things are available to you at Rockabilia. And I laugh because when I'm naming all these bands, it almost sounds like a joke, where you're just like, is it like the shopping mall for all this officially licensed band merch stuff? Simple answer is yes. They ship from the Midwest. It gets to you anywhere in the United States very fast. They also have great customer service if you run into any issues, which truthfully I never have, and I've ordered multiple things from them. They also do limited edition runs with bands, whether that's like a cool, timely Converge shirt that they did around the release of this record. Just always pay attention to what they have going on and visit the site on a regular basis. So again, rockabilia.com, use the promo code 100 words or less for 10% off your first order, and eternal thanks to rockabilia.com. Hitting on You Fail Me, just in regards to that record is my own personal favorite of your guys's. And I think I know just for myself and many others that have spoken about it, it's bleak, it's psychologically drained. It definitely feels like a come down of all right, we've experienced a lot in the past couple of years. Does any element of that record reflect burnout, or something that's a little more distant but still remaining emotionally impactful? Are there any elements of that kind of resonate now that I'm saying it to you?
Yeah, I would say so. It's a bleak record, the whole, this sort of theme of that record, and the songs all came together kind of after we became a 4-piece too. And I think that it's the first record that you get like the four of us really focusing together to make a thing, and I think I personally I love Aaron. I wish I saw him more, even now today, but it is what it is. And you become a 4-piece, and now you have new challenges because you don't have this other player anymore. And so it changes the way we're writing, you don't have that fifth person, so this person's now writing from a perspective where they need to play all of these things and be able to play all of these things. You're not writing two parts that happen at once. And so it changes the focus of stuff a lot. And it boiled down the way we, I think I don't know, write songs or present songs. And it kind of became the way we do things from there on,
Yeah.
But visually and the sort of concept of that record started to come together. I would say really early on, maybe a year or so before we put out that record, we started playing it live, or playing the song live, a weird primordial version of it. Because I don't know, we're hardcore kids. We're used to playing these really abbreviated songs that are 3 and 4 minutes long or whatever. And then you never get loose. And one of the goofy parts about being in a band that happens to be fun is exploring space and experimenting. And so we were yeah, the song's not done and it's kind of free form, but let's throw it in sets anyway, just to do something different and do something interesting. And that song kind of got fleshed out in live, and most songs kind of don't. And so the sort of the identifying song for that record, came together really early, and it really sort of shaped everything around it. It sort of had its own gravity. So that record came together, and I don't know, really in a concentrated form. It was I don't know. It's like an angry sort of boiled down thing. And it also, it's, there was a term that Kurt used back then that like, he said like, it's like an anti-metal record where it's like, it's hyper aggressive, but, and hard, but doesn't have like a overly like modern metallic guitar sound. It has like something more like adjacent to like noise rock in places, which is, interesting for the time.
Absolutely. At this point too, I know that the band, ostensibly, not only had to become a business, but like there were, financial implications. Like you guys obviously were still creatively participating in a lot of other things, but like the band was, a much more serious endeavor.
Yeah, sure.
But you guys have always been very, at least from an outside observer, you've been very, you've kept the circle tight, like you didn't feel the need to pursue like, okay, we need to, get Slipknot's management to make us a big band or whatever. Was that just a very, I guess, concerted focus of you guys, that it was just a matter of like, well, yeah, we can be, a professional band, but we don't need to have a lot of professional trappings that other bands, right or wrong, obviously employ?
Well, I mean, like the music industry exists for a reason. At some point, aspects of it were invented to allow an artist to do less that wasn't artistic, because like you're right, like stuff becomes, like I don't know, it become more stuff happens, you get like more moving parts or whatever. But like one of the things about being like a hardcore band and like a punk rock band is we're middle class artists, like we're working artists, we're not wealthy, like it takes like, I don't know, it takes, like money and effort and like to just do things, right? Like, and like we don't, if we want to like perform live and like be able to like, take that time away from the world, like it costs like a certain amount, because we're not, like 16 years old with no expenses, like we have families and we have responsibilities and all that stuff. So like we take that like super seriously, and like a lot of management comes in under the guise of managing things. And oftentimes the artists, they were attracted to the artist because of what the artist has done on their own already. And they like just occupy space and oftentimes take money, and it's like, I don't think that a lot of managers, deserve 20% of anything a band makes, especially on a punk rock level. Like the economics are just really hard. And so like, I think anybody who like is in a band who subscribes to that DIY, ethos, like understands that and respects that. And it's like, I can do this shit myself, like I don't need to like, I don't know, like I don't need our band to be like part of the a machinery that's like going to do things that are probably opportunities that we're already creating on our own through our efforts and, our music, so we've kept it tight, like we've, I don't know, like even like the professional businesses that we do work with that aren't, that are like music adjacent, like our accountants are music accountants and they're punk rock guys in bands, like, it's the same, it's like, that's the thing. It's like, we try to keep our circle tight, like our most of our merch is printed by, like my brother-in-law who sings for the Hope Conspiracy, we try to keep things, tight, and we try to keep like our world sort of, stable. We welcome lots of things into it. But like we realize that a lot of the trappings of like music business, just like start on the management level and like things like that. So we just don't really bother.
Right. Yeah. You guys can handle it on your own. That's totally fine.
Yeah. And it's not to say it's like easy, because it's not. Managers do a lot, like they do. It's like not fucking fun to like try to find, like, I don't know, like my bag or like, like Nate's bass if it's lost, and you're like
right
in between flights and you got to do this and do that. And then, we have to coordinate like getting from this place to this place. And I need to check on our merch order because, like there was a snow day and it might have affected our travel. And like, like there's a lot of stuff that we do that like a manager probably would do in certain situations, like leading to, like a tour or whatever, but we just do the stuff. So it's not easy. I respect the job. I just like, we can't afford it.
Yeah. Totally understand. And I don't mean to lump all three of these records together, but I think it's emblematic of you guys feeling like the most confident or full-throated in your approach from, No Heroes, Axe to Fall, and All We Love. It feels like all of those, while distinctly different, it's you guys harnessing and exploring the different characteristics of what Converge is.
Sure.
And like, this is kind of a tangential question to, those three records in particular, but it's like, as you guys are going into, writing for new records and everything, do you kind of focus on like a central theme of what you want to explore, whether it's like, okay, you really want to focus on like a different guitar tone and then that will blossom into the record, or, a different way to approach lyrically. I know that there's probably a million different ways you approach your records, but those three records in particular, I think, are very emblematic of the different, I guess, alleyways that you guys explore.
Yeah, they're all like they're all different from each other, right? Like they all sound different, but they're related. I think some of the musical aspects of like what you described, like exploring like a guitar tone, like an equipment thing, like chasing something like that, happens while song ideas are sort of happening, right? So like if Kurt's he's an engineering perspective, all the time, that's kind of where he's at. So he's always putting together wild sounds, mic combinations, cab combinations, head combinations. And so like he may stumble upon something technically in that, like working on anything, just messing around with sounds and go like, oh, that's inspiring. That triggers something, I want to bring that into this record or this idea. So I would say it probably happens for him more than like anybody. But yeah, like I think the ideas that we all kind of like come together with are usually kind of unified. Like for this record, the only thing that we kind of said was like stylistically, like we want it to be almost like a noise rock record. And then that never happened. Like, but it was there in spirit. You know what I mean? Like we just kind of like wanted like a looseness. We wanted the songs to kind of like be able to just kind of like be played by the four of us without like, like struggling to figure out like a way to play something live or like, I don't know, like rely like heavily on like something like technically like an effect or anything. We just kind of wanted to be like a raw record. So like that kind of like steered it in a direction, so like indirectly, lyrically, and I don't really change like what I do. Like I just sort of write when I feel compelled to write. And I think that like most lyricists, that's kind of how they work, just sort of like don't feel particularly great. Feel the need to sort of expel some sort of like creative energy, and you just kind of like, throw some things down like in a notebook or in a document or whatever. But I don't really like try to like steer anything like more specific than that, really.
Mm-hmm. I totally get that.
Yeah.
Hitting on the Dusk and Us and the Blood Moon collaboration you did, though those I think both were, surprising for people who had followed the band, even if it was just like, oh, I just got into Converge the past couple of years and wow, they're doing a collaboration record. And like the Dusk and Us feels like sort of a synopsis of what, like, all the eras of Converge. During those, I guess, two, cycles, as it were, did you guys, I guess, collectively feel that you're now, you have such a body of work that you are referencing, like, you don't want to repeat yourself, but then you're like, well, we've done a lot already. Like, where do we go from here, kind of scenario?
Well, it depends what the intention is, right? Like, if the intention is for the band to never repeat itself, or in some way, like, well, then a band never has an identity, like, you never really have a thing that you artistically kind of settle in. So I think I don't know. I think that sometimes bands get hyper focused on being different instead of being themselves. And sometimes you just need to embrace your imperfections, because that's what brings you to it, and that's what makes you not ordinary, and I kind of think that that's what I do, I know I'm not I can't be a notey singer in any way, a melodious singer, because I've done too much damage to my voice. My voice is a disaster area. That's why I sound like a monster, so fucking embrace it. I embrace what I can do, and I kind of lean into it. And I think that confidence sometimes can steer a direction of a record. You know what I mean? Because you just yeah, I know that I sound particularly crazy here, but that's what I'm intending to do. So I'm into it.
Right. How about we do a whole record like that? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. And then you're just fuck it. Yeah. You just kind of lean into that. But if I focus on any one thing, is that I just want I want the records to be, because I just want them to be honest and real. And a lot of the subject matter that I work through in songs, a lot of it is about me dealing with my depression in my life, and the sort of the trials and tribulations that it brings. And it's, its causes, its effects, how it sort of is a lens for me to look at the rest of the world sometimes. And I use it as part of me being a healthy individual, it's the place where I put that energy to try to work through things in a way. And I take that process super seriously. So I want to communicate that, I want to communicate the darkness that I feel sometimes. So maybe somebody can relate to it in their own life, and feel that they're not alone in those moments, because it fucking sucks to feel them, and I don't know, I don't think it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, writing dark music, brings dark thoughts, or dark experiences. But life's a pressure cooker sometimes, and I need a place to put those things. And I want to communicate how intense those feelings are, and it's I don't know, it's a lot emotionally. So if I'm making a record and it hurts to listen back to, or to experience in some way, after the fact, I'm I know that I got really close to that nerve that feels really exposed for me. And that's what I intend to do, because I feel that that's the way to do it, That's that's what hardcore is. That's
absolutely,
and that helps me get to another day as a person.
Definitely. The last few things I want to hit on was just the notion that not only have you guys released obviously a lot of music, but then you've done it in the format of splits and 7 inches, and even 5 inches. the fact that, I mean, I know a lot of that output was either a function of you guys having songs or being like we're never going to say no to a split with Napalm Death, like, or what have you.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of opportunities that like you get that are like really, yeah. Splits are a lot about opportunities for sure, and friendships too.
Right. Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Like, kind of reflecting on it, it doesn't have to be a split, but like reflecting on those, for lack of a better term, one-off releases that don't have anything to do with a record or what have you. Is there one that you look back on in particular that is, a point of pride for you? Whether it's, oh, I felt like it was just exciting to be able to do this. And I know I'm asking you to pick a favorite child, so you don't have to feel pressure, but just wanted you to reflect on any of those.
It's interesting because I've never been asked that question. Like just in life, well, like honestly, like kind of like they're all meaningful because they all represent friendships or like sort of peer relationships that like you sort of have got through touring in some capacity. Like the Napalm one is like a really good example of that, where like I think we met Shane in Japan on our first Japanese tour that we did, because we went out with one of his bands called Lockup, and Thomas Lindbergh from At the Gates sang for Lockup as well. And so that was like one of the first times like we sort of socially bonded with those guys, and like it was like just super impactful to us that like, number one, like as listeners of music, like I knew me personally, like Napalm changed my fucking life. Like for me, my entry point for that band was Harmony Corruption. And like, I was aware of records prior, but that was like the one that made like an imprint on me. And I was like, this is something fucking awesome, because this is like political hardcore done at the sort of grindcore level. They were doing some like really interesting things, and like, it just like made a big impact on me. So like, I'm like meeting this guy for the first time, and then like, we've known him since. So that was like our gateway to Napalm. And then we would meet him on various like festivals and stuff. And, we had like a really good friendship from that tour as well with Thomas Lindbergh too. Then that kind of later led to us touring with At the Gates and whatnot when they reformed and all that.
Yeah,
and like,
no, that's really cool.
Yeah, and even like leading to like maybe like her doing that Dysphere record actually. That probably was like the first time he met him too.
Yeah, those are really, and I just love the fact that things like that can still exist on a more serious level, because obviously within punk and hardcore, like the split 7 inches or split releases with friends that you toured with or whatever, it's like it can still exist and be meaningful, even if you're a band that has been around for 15 years. It's like, yeah, let's do a split. Who cares?
It's a cool art form, because like what you're basically doing is you're giving each other nods of sort of like creative approval, and like, and I don't know, in a way they're like, you're celebrating like a friendship or a bond. It's like, yeah, it's a cool thing.
Mm-hmm. And the last thing I want to hit on, and it may seem superficial, but follow along with me here. I know for myself and many other people who have, played in bands and had some level of, people paying attention to what they're doing, the shirts you wear on stage. Okay. I know, again, like I said, superficial.
No,
but like
this is also a big deal. Shirts on stage are a massive deal. So this is a subject that I've never been asked about, but I could talk about for hours.
Well, I'm glad you're following along, Jake. But yeah, I just know like the many times I've seen you guys where it's like, I just see, either you shining light in a band that I personally had never heard of before, or was just like, oh, that's great. You're wearing a, name any band, but like something that like I might not have checked out or whatever.
Absolutely.
So yeah, talk to me about like how, I guess when you first started to recognize that you could shine a light in the way that you have.
Well, I fucking love band shirts. Like as a fan of music and getting into hardcore and punk rock, to me, the trophy that meant the most to me from a show was getting a shirt at the show, right? Because it was, this just special, rare thing, that there's not many of them. You're celebrating that moment that you're having there at that time. It's like an electric experience, like getting a good band shirt at a specific time. And like, I don't know, like, I just remember like being a kid and like fucking like getting a 7-second shirt, and throwing it like on over my Eye for an Eye shirt that I just bought, at the show. And now I have 3 shirts on, and I'm gonna, I'm dying at the show, but like I still want to stage dive. So I have all this stuff on me, and this is how I'm going to live. Like, it was just like something that like, I don't know, I really loved having. Then when I started getting into bands, especially like in the thrash world, I would always pay attention for whatever reason to the band shirts that the members had on, and it would make me go, oh, wow, what is that band? That's super interesting. I have a good example. It's not, I don't think it's over here. Anyway, I think it was the Violence Oppressing the Masses cassette. The band photo in that, one of the members has a Laughing Dead shirt on, and I was like, whoa, what is that? Is that a band? Is that like some like heavy metal shop in the, the Bay Area I don't know about? Like, what is this thing? And then they put an ad in an early metal magazine, like where you could like send away for their demo or whatever. And I sent away for their demo and like got into that band that way. So for me, it was like a gateway, where you would just learn about stuff. And so when I don't know, when I love a band, I get a shirt. That's kind of like just like how it goes. And like sometimes like, yeah, you'll play a show and you're like, I want to celebrate this band. I want like more people to know about like band A or B. And so I'm going to wear this shirt today. And like, maybe that can like be a thing. Like, I don't know. These are like little things, but like he probably remembers this. I doubt maybe he'll see this. I don't know. But Choke wore a it's probably like 1990. He went to the Nirvana show, or he must have there was a Nirvana show that was at the channel, that was like a few months before a Slapshot show. And I was at the Slapshot show, not the Nirvana show. And this was like before, Nevermind happened. So they were very much like a band that was like, people are aware of that, was a thing, but it wasn't the thing yet. And I remember seeing him wear a Nirvana shirt and like being like, oh, he knows about Nirvana. Fucking cool. Because, like, it's not a deep cut, but it's kind of like a deep cut. It was like being into Mudhoney at the time. It wasn't huge yet. Yeah. And just getting turned on to bands. And so like, I like that gateway. I think it's a great thing to do.
Yeah. Well, and I like that, especially when you're showing up at places like, a hardcore dude wearing a, Sunday shirt or whatever. Like when you're taking these things in different places and it doesn't necessarily sonically make sense, but obviously as a music fan, you're just like, well, yeah, I want to make sure that people, aren't just listening to the most brutal death metal all the time.
Yeah, for sure. Because like, the one thing like you hear in our band, right? Like I know like we've kind of like become our own sort of thing over time, but like it's a spattering of different styles of things. And like we're really fortunate of the age group that we've come up where a variety of different sounds have kind of had their flashpoint like right in front of us as fans of music and all around us. And so like, they're and Converge, there's a little Fugazi and Right to Spring and Lungfish. There's also a little bit of Slayer and Napalm Death too, it's just a thing. And so like we try to celebrate that diversity, where like you'll be like, oh, like I don't know, Kurt has a Sade shirt on. That's awesome.
There you go. Hopefully you enjoyed that discussion with Jake, and I know I did. I could have talked to him for probably another half an hour, 40 minutes, but at a certain point I feel like, man, we're really just hanging out at this point. And that's fine. But I don't want to feel like I'm just, wasting your time, wasting the person's time just to be like, hey man, can we talk about that one song, that one record? I don't need to do that. But Jake was great. And like I said, check out the new Converge record that just came out on Epitaph and Deathwish. Love it. So exceptional. And shout out to Stephanie for making this all happen, because she's the, PR person extraordinaire. So huge shout out to her. Next week, I have a great conversation with a band that I love deeply. I have a discussion with Yuri Avila from Trauma Ray. I love Trauma Ray. I saw them open, I was 2019 or something like that. I saw them open for, I think, Slow Crush, if I'm not mistaken. We actually talk about it in the episode, but have enjoyed the band ever since. Like, didn't really know where they were going to go sonically, and they've just only gotten more and more interesting to me. So, we had to do this because they just released a new EP. So Yuri was a great hang talking about Texas hardcore, and it was super, super fun. So that's what we have next week, and celebrate 701 episodes next week. But shout out to you, the listener. If you're still listening to this, this is like a warm embrace for you. But anyways, until next week, please be safe, everybody.
With Verbal's last-minute deals, you can save over $50 on your spring getaway. So whether it's a mountain escape with friends, a family week at the beach, or sightseeing in a new city, there's still time to get great discounts. Book your next stay now. Average savings $72. Select homes only.